Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to round one of the Formula Alpha Championship for 2024, or at least the second half of 2024. It is good to be back after what feels like quite a long time out of the AROC comms box. Delighted to be back there. What a venue to start off the season here at the circuit in Monza. We're heading into qualifying, the final 10 minutes of qualifying, as a matter of fact, with Colin Knief leading the charge at the moment. 152.8 sees him currently heading up this session with Paul Brady. Great to see him returning, as well as Matt Daly in his usual high position there, running in P3 at the moment. Then we have Alan Matthews, Will Inglis, Paul Milliman, Jack Hodson completing our running for our drivers so far in qualifying. I think we might have one or two more showing up at some point this evening, but it is great to be back, as I say, for some fantastic racing action. A bit of an update for what's going on in the championships for this part of the year, so to speak. Well, we're going a bit back to basics, of course. Last season we enjoyed the Giulia GTAM cars as well as the Formula 1 Formula Hybrids there, as we have an unusual Colin Knief mistake there. Heading through the Parabolica, we see Colin Knief perhaps take a bit too much curb. That upsets the back end and the car spins round. He dives back to the pits. So we'll go on board with Matt Daly. He's currently heading through to the final part of the lap. No, he's not. I'm completely wrong. There's my first commentary mistake of the season. He's heading into the first Lesmo there. One of the more technical parts of this lap before we run all the way down to Ascari, of course. A second Lesmo to negotiate now. But as I was saying, yeah, we're going a bit back to basics in terms of our cars. We had the Formula Hybrid, our real-life interpretation, or sorry, our virtual interpretation, if you will, of a real-life Formula 1 car, as well as the Giulia GTAM. We're going a bit back to more simpler times. If you can think back a few seasons ago now, since we last ran the Tartus FA01, and Matt Daly there riding over the Ascari curbs there, over the chicane. It does trick a few people, that corner complex. It certainly has me on a number of occasions. That curb can be quite unforgiving, especially in these short wheelbase cars. And let's have a bit of a chat about these cars. Under 500 kilos, 450 by the time you got a driver and a bit of fuel in, let's say 530 kilos, 40 maybe. Still very lightweight indeed. Powered, of course, by the 1.4 litre multi-air Alfa Romeo engine, as found in the likes of the Giulietta, as well as the Mito Quadrifoglio and some other trims as well. A fine engine indeed. In this trim, pushing out around about 200 horsepower, so it's certainly got the gusto to push on a light little car like this one. It might not be the last word in absolute top speed, but as we've already seen so far this evening, it certainly is still a challenge for the drivers. That nice short wheelbase, that relative lack of aerodynamics. It keeps things simple, but it's certainly an enjoyable car to drive. As we see Matt Daly heading into the first corner now. First Variante, as they are all known here at Monza. We're going to go back on board with Colin Knief, our man in pole at the moment. Sorry, our man on pole. I'm already not speaking, we're only 4 minutes in. It's business as usual here. A 152.8 for Colin at the moment as he leads up this session. He set that about 10 minutes ago and hasn't got near it just yet. Let's have a look at the rest of the timing for the other drivers here. Jack Hodson looking strong in the first couple of sectors. Heads into the first corner now with that nice, lovely drone shot we've now got on board. And the back end steps out on him as well. I think we've already got our first bout of commentator's curse, ladies and gentlemen. It seems to be no matter what car I go on board with, I just wreak havoc, really, and the run comes to a bitter end. As we see, there is Colin Knief heading on by now, as Jack Hodson, currently running in fourth at the moment, is trying his best to set the last couple of fast laps. 1:53 lap time in these cars. It's a decently long lap owing to the relative lack of straight line performance. That means with 6 minutes to go in this session, drivers are really not going to have that many attempts to get a fast lap in. One driver I do want to go on board with is Will Inglis. Will, we know, is a fierce competitor, especially when he's in the Tourer cars. And Will spins out as well. No matter what car I go on board with, I'm going to cause some pretty serious incidents, it appears. I already would like to put my first apology in to the drivers for the chaos I will be causing. It's none of your fault, it's all mine. As we see Will in his traditional blue and yellow Tainer Batteries liveried car there. He is a formidable driver, particularly in the touring cars, and I suspect he'll be qualifying slightly higher up if he can get a clean lap. And he should be able to get some decent speed up, get the tyres in a decently happy window. That I don't think they really matter all that much at this circuit in these cars. He should be able to get the car ready for another fast lap attempt in just a moment. Let's see him now as he goes wide open on the throttle and gets ready to set another fast lap. Alex Smith joins the session. Great to see. Alex was, of course, unbeatable in the previous running of the single-seater championship, the first half of this year in our hybrid Formula 1 cars. Let's see if we can keep that record up. Well, it wasn't quite unbeatable. I'm being slightly hyperbolic, if you will. Let's see if Alex can keep up his great record of performances for the second half of the season. I actually saw he sent in a picture recently of the setup. He's no longer on a PlayStation controller, so that's deeply disappointing, I must say, Alex. But great to have you back nonetheless. No one at the moment able to bring a challenge to Colin Knief's fastest lap so far. The man closest is Matt Daly as he heads now into the Ascari chicane. See the brakes glowing red hot there as he tries to get the car slowed down. Doesn't want to take too much of a bite out of the curbs because that is going to upset this short wheelbase car as he jumps back onto the throttle to head down to Parabolica once again. Parabolica, another very technical corner here. It might look nice and simple, but you've got to find that very fine balance between scrubbing off time because you're heading into the corner too slow and scrubbing off time because you're understeering through the right-hander. So it is a very fine balance indeed because you want to try and keep that momentum up before you run back onto the start-finish straight once again, where Formula 1 cars in the past have posted blistering world record times. Some of the fastest speeds we will see of any Formula 1 venue. Now it's our chance to run them in our Formula 4/Formula 3 inspired cars. Matt Daly getting closer on this occasion. He lost out through the middle sector, but in fact he lost out quite a lot on the middle sector, and he's in the 156s. Colin Knief on the 155s as well, so it seems to be the pace potentially drying up a bit from this session now. We've got 3 minutes left on the clock. Colin Knief goes purple through the middle sector. He's going to get back onto the exit of the Parabolica once again as he goes wide open. Let's see what time he can post. Well, our predicted lap time not working at the moment here in qualifying. He crosses the line with another purple sector and actually improves on his time. I didn't think it could get any better for Colin Knief, but he goes a 152.1. That is a substantial improvement there and a real show of force as he heads into the first corner. A 152.1. This is looking like it's going to be a good one for Colin Knief, it must be said. He is starting this championship well. He's doing everything he needs to do at this point to try and take back the crown. Not getting on with the Formula 1 machinery in the previous series, but he's going to give it a damn good go, I suspect, in the new cars, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing that. I should mention, by the way, I do apologise for not being there for the first round of the touring car action, also at this circuit. Commitments just meant that I was unable to make it to that round, but I'm very much looking forward to being at the next round, round 2 of the touring car series next Wednesday. It will be, of course, streamed as I will endeavour to have every round of this series stream, so do watch along even if you don't feel like participating. I hope you do feel like participating. It's certainly plenty of fun to be had in Assetto Corsa, but if you'd rather watch along, then with the stream start at 8 PM every evening as we have a little bit of an intro time. Usually I'm getting myself ready or breaking software in the background, as might have been the case ever so slightly this evening, and we head into qualifying around about 15 minutes after start before we have our 2 races to compete in. Of course, in case you're not familiar, welcome, by the way, to the AROC Racing Leagues. We have our qualifying session 25 minutes before we have a small, very small break, in fact, before race 1. We have 25 minutes worth of fantastic racing action. Before I go all Sean Connery, we have 25 minutes of fantastic racing action in race 1, followed up by a reverse grid race in race 2, which can be certainly action-packed, but is designed to give the whole field a bit of a chance at fighting for that podium. Plenty of fun to be had. The final 60 minutes now in this session. Not an improvement there for Colin Knief, but it was very close indeed. A 152.1 on that go around. Alex Smith posted a nice time there, a 154.3. He's in the mix. Goes ahead of Will Inglis on one of his first few attempts. In fact, make that his first fast lap attempt. Sorry, no, second there. Already the misinformation begins in this series. We're on board at the moment with Alex Smith, which I believe that is Alan Matthews' old livery, if I'm not mistaken. No, they're both running in the Auto Italia liveried car there. So let's see if we have any Alan Matthews and Alex Smith battles. That'll be fun to see there. I've just come back into this off the back of a touring car series. So in my other commentary, I'm doing karting, where obviously everyone's in an identical car apart from the numbers. So you've got to be hot on the heels, really, driver identification. Then I've had the nice, easy kind of change in that, really, where I've had touring cars where everyone runs a different livery, so it's been very easy to identify. And now it seems like we've got a happy middle ground as the timer hits 0 on this session. Willingliss will be the next car to cross the line. Can he improve? It doesn't look like he's going to be able to. He doesn't that time around. There's a 1:54.8. Next up, we're going to have Paul Milner coming across the line. He does improve at 1:55.6. Next is going to be our provisional pole sitter, Colin Knief, as he heads around the Parabolica. What can he do? Alex Smith, I can tell you, can have a big accident at the Ascari chicane. So P6 will be all he can do in this session. 130 kilometers an hour as Colin Knief bails out of this run. Back into the pit for Colin. And next up, we're going to have Alan Matthews now heading in to the Parabolica. And hard on the brakes to try and screw off a little bit of that speed. He's on the few remaining cars out on track. He hasn't improved through the first couple of sectors. Can he do anything into the final one? Let's find out in just a moment's time. Very close between him and Alan Matthews. Sorry, him and Alex Smith. As he crosses the line, he does extend that gap ever so slightly. It's now 1:54.211. Nice improvement towards the end there for Alan Matthews. Next up then, we're going to have Matt Daly, 1:53.3 to try and improve upon it. It was very slow through the first couple of sectors for him, according to the timing system, and he dives into the pits there, deciding there's nothing left to do. So our final driver out on this session to try and improve is Jack Hodson, running in fourth for quite a while in this session. No improvement to be found just yet. I think this is still an outlap by the looks of things. It is. He dives back into the bits. And that brings an end to our qualifying for round 1 of the Formula Alpha Championship single-seater series. We'll catch you in just a few moments as we get ready for race 1 here at Monza. Welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. On the grid then, ready for race 1 of round 1 here at Monza. It's going to be a fantastic race. I can already feel it as we head into the first session. The graphics have already broken, so we're off to a flying start. Hello, please work. Oh, that's okay. Well, it's going to be an exciting start as we see Colin Knief, Matt Daly lined up on the grid. Paul Brady borrowing Matt Daly's car as well, followed close behind by Jack Hodson and Alan Matthews as the lights begin to tick over. It's 6 red lights on the gantry, and we are away for race 1 here at Monza then. It's a good start for everyone involved, actually. This car forgiving on the launch. Rear-wheel drive, of course, plenty of power for the weight, all things considered, but it's a particularly good start there for Matt Daly, who's having a look around the outside. Colin has to defend the inside there. We see Alan Matthews under pressure from Paul Brady. Down the back end, steps out on Colin Knief's car, but he seems to still be able to break away ever so slightly. Matt Daly really putting that pressure on, though, had that much more momentum as he exited the first corner. We're going to run through towards the second variante in just a moment. Now Colin runs wide as we see Alan Matthews, Paul Brady going side by side there, running through the second corner. And now we have Matt Daly going around the outside, late on the brakes, but goes too deep into the corner. Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, we're getting round 2 of that now as you see Matt Daly has to back off, jump back into second place. Colin still leads. Paul Brady seems to have had the upper hand on Alan Matthews at the moment. Meanwhile, Will Inglis under pressure there. Will, I am so sorry. I've done this to you once already in this race. I've done it to you once again as you tumble back to 8th position. Good recovery, though, all things considered. Someone else is having an offer there. That is Jack Hodson. The back end on these cars seems to be very unforgiving at this moment in time, of course. The tyre is going to be slightly cooled by the run to the grid. They're not going to be quite up to temperature just yet, and the drivers might not be fully used to a run with a full load of fuel on board. The car's going to be heaviest, potentially lowest on grip that they've seen so far all weekend. Alex Smith, Paul Millman actually on the medium compound of tyre. They've decided that the soft is going to drop off too much later on, so that harder compound with slightly less grip at the start might endure further into the race and might provide them a better lap time later on. So we could be seeing a good recovery for those 2 drivers later on into this race. Meanwhile, Matt Daly has tumbled back 1.7 seconds behind Colin Knief now, whereas Paul Brady isn't quite there yet, ready to fight for P2, but he's certainly enthralled in a battle for the podium nonetheless. He's trying to defend from Alan Matthews, currently trying to fight for P4 is Alan Matthews. Meanwhile, Paul Millman not too far behind at all. He's running in P5, quite a lonely P5, all things considered. Will Inglis, his nearest rival, owing to the issues that the drivers further down have had. That is Jack Hodson, who we saw had a spin out on the exit of the second Lesmo. And then we've also had, by the looks of things on the Parabolica, Alex Smith, one of the runners on the medium compound of tyre, dropping off and tumbling to the back end of the order. He's going to have a real tall order, I suspect, to get those now slightly damaged, perhaps, car and tyre combination back to try and fight against Jack Hodson. And there we saw he couldn't quite get it slowed down for that first corner, so I suspect his car not very happy. Not the start Alex Smith would have wanted. Let's have a look back at the top end of the field once again. 2.5 seconds between him and Matt Daly. He seems to be nicely in control of this race for the time being. We are only 2 minutes in, though, so anything can happen just yet. Matt Daly then putting that pressure on. Hopefully later on, meanwhile, Paul Brady running rather nicely, 1 second ahead of Alan Matthews. Not too far behind, about 7 seconds behind, we have Paul Millman with a nice comfortable gap between him and Will Inglis as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this race unfolds for Paul. Paul, who we saw getting a few podiums to his name in the previous series at the start of the year. Seems to be gaining more confidence in his driving, more confidence in the cars as well. He is on that medium compound of tyre, so I suspect later on, if he's able to keep this position up, he could be looking quite good later on into the race when he's got that slightly better tyre performance. The tyres might have a bit more to give later on. He could be setting himself up nicely to start off the series with a good haul of points here in the midfield. It's so exciting, this first part of the season, when everything is still to play for. The book is so wide open. Everyone's in with a fighting chance. It's all about getting a nice, good, consistent start to the year's worth of racing, or rather the season's worth of racing, because that really can dictate how things play out later on. It's certainly a good start for Colin, though, as he heads down into the third lap now. I should point out a 1:53.7 on this, only the second lap of the race. So the car's nice and heavy. Admittedly, he's got good tyres, but the car's heavy and he's not fully in the rhythm yet. And he's already posting what would be a very competitive time in qualifying. This is something we've come to expect of Colin Knief now. What we haven't come to expect of Colin was that earlier qualifying incident. So I really am hoping for his sake we don't see a repeat of that with a very slight spin off. If there's one trait that these cars do seem to possess, it's that short wheelbase. If it's a bit unforgiving over the curve, so the drivers are really going to have to be gentle in how they treat the car and treat the curbs, because the car will bite back. It will punish the driver if it's not respected, and it's certainly a mighty track as well. It looks like Alan Matthews has just been punished by the car there. 25 kilometer per hour collision with a barrier there sees Alan being able to continue on, but with a slight bit of damage as well. I should mention, by the way, in terms of damage, we are running reduced damage, but damage nonetheless. I believe the figure's about 60% of the damage rate for any collisions. So with some serious knocks, you are still going to be pretty heavily impeded in terms of your performance if you have a big off, but in terms of light scrapes here or there, we shouldn't be too heavily affected in terms of the overall car performance. That might encourage some slightly closer racing, which, just in case the racing wasn't close enough already from some of the races that we saw in the previous few series. We see the two yellow cars are just up front in the distance there. That is Matt Daly and Paul Brady. Paul Brady within 5 seconds of his rival in yellow. I'm going to call them teammates for now because they are running in a very similar style of car. In terms of lap pace at the moment, Paul Brady a 1:54.3 compared to Matt Daly a 1:53.8. So half a second separates them in terms of their current pace. And all these times that we're seeing are perhaps, unsurprisingly, the best laps of the race so far, as the tyres are still healthy, drivers are getting settled in, and the fuel load is getting lighter lap by lap. And this is, of course, quite a fuel-thirsty circuit, although, in my experience, oh dear, as Paul Brady nearly takes a bit too much curb there. The back end does step out. He is able to recover, but as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner of your screens, ladies and gentlemen, the predicted lap time increases exponentially there with the mistakes that you make. The game predicting that he's going to set about a 1:55.3 on this lap, so it puts him competitive with the midfield, but not as competitive as to where he'd want to be in terms of trying to keep pace with Matt Daly. Running down the hill now, another opportunity to build up some immense speed at this circuit. But as I was saying then before Paul had his near miss, shall we say, there are quite a few circuits in this car which can be pretty heavy on the fuel load, because you're wide open for quite a lot of the lap in these cars, because you've got the power level and the grip really to afford to do that. So you find out that these 1.4 litre multi-air or fully integrated robotized engine series cars are really quite heavily stressed. So it's a testament to them, I think, that they are able to fight as well as they are. Willing List looks like he's just had an issue. I can't actually see him on the timing tower at the moment. I suspect he'll come back online there. Jack Hodson also having an issue. Oh no, it just looks like the timing system seems to be stopping them at their Scari for some reason. That's okay. That's no bother at all. We're on board at the moment with Alex Smith, who has got back ahead of Jack Hodson, so perhaps that was an issue. He is on the medium compounder tyres. I think 17 minutes to go. Still plenty of race time left in this one. Let's see where he can end up. He's still got a few chances here. Willingless is only 5 seconds up the road. He's on that medium compound tyre, as I say. He could still be within a shout of some decent points. Alan Matthews, meanwhile, is currently showing as running in P1. Ignore that, that's P4. As we head around the right hand, I've got to get used to that once again with the older Seto Corsa, the timing whoopsie, if you will. Colin Knief leading this race then with a nice comfortable margin. I believe that margin is around about 10 seconds at this moment in time. Yeah, that's where 5 seconds. I was about to say that's where my maths would put it, but as we've seen, my maths is wrong. Perhaps not for the first time. 16 minutes then to go in this race, and this is going to be perhaps the easiest championship update we've ever had. No one. 0 points for everyone. There we go. Championship update over. Everyone's winning, everyone's losing. Schrodinger's championship. But as I say, around about 16 minutes to go. The gap extends out front to about 6 seconds now between Colin Knief and Matt Daly. Historical rivals in this series, of course. I suspect we'll see them fighting on for further championships in the future as well. I should mention, by the way, I can't believe how long ago it was already. Time really does fly. National Alpha Day. It was a pleasure to see some of you, as it always is. It's been a little while since I came to the last one, owing to my well-documented, not issues, but kind of, let's just say my transportation didn't quite make it there in the previous year, but I'm pleased to say got there quite early, in fact. So it was lovely to meet the likes of Matt Daly in his lovely little Alpha Sud as the back end on Colin Caniff's car steps out into the first corner. I think he went into the first corner a little bit too hot there, had to go quite heavy onto the brake, carried a bit too much speed into the final phase of the corner. As he jumped back on the throttle, there was a bit too much going on for the back axle to cope with, and we saw the back end kick out. Nice recovery though. Really, it could not always go as smoothly as it did then. So Colin still leading by a nice, comfortable margin for the time being. But yeah, as I say, it was nice to meet the likes of Matt Daly in that lovely Alpha Sud. I also got to see Guy Swarbrick, and I believe a couple of other faces. But to be honest, it's all a bit of a blur. It was a very hectic, very chaotic day. Plenty to do. I hope that some of you watching were also on track with me as well during the Mito/Giulietta track parades. That was good fun as ever. Nice to stretch the legs of the QV a little bit within reasonable limits, of course. But as I say, yeah, very action-packed day. We had that. We had plenty of lovely Alphas to see as ever, and also the likes of the Pirelli simulator rig as well, which was I didn't get a chance to have a go on, as I say, because it was so busy and I had quite a long journey there and back. Didn't quite get to jump on it. It's probably for the best of everyone involved, really, because it might not have gone very well, really. I might have made a bit of an embarrassment of myself, but still great fun nonetheless, and look forward to the next one and many Alfa Romeo events in the future as well. So I think my wallet might not appreciate it, because I've grown out or lost all of my old AROC merchandise, so I kind of had to do a bit of a replenisher. And let's just say that I left the shop with 2 big clear plastic bags full of stuff. So I'm certainly kitted out for the next little while, which I have no complaints of. The merchandise is lovely stuff, I must say. The mug is fantastic. I really enjoy the jacket as well. Some really nice stuff just in time for winter as well. Colin extending his lead out in front in the meantime. 13 seconds between Colin and Matt Daly. So Matt Daly having issues on that previous lap. His last lap, a 2-minute 1 second lap there. So Colin is looking a little bit more comfortable out in front. But interestingly, Paul Brady seems to have been dropping off ever so slightly over the past few laps as well, because he's still 5 seconds down. Not to say that this is a poor effort by any means. He started well. He's so far running in this race well, and is currently on the cards for a bit of a podium here, which is good to see, because it is nice to have Paul back and into the rhythm of things by the looks of it. So Paul Millman, as we have the Paul section of the timing tower, running very nicely indeed as well on the medium compound tire, up into 4th position now. Seems to just about have the measure on Willingliss at the moment. In fact, they are neck and neck in terms of their pace. A 156.21 on the previous lap for Paul Millman. That was his best lap of the race so far. Willingliss, a 156.165. So they are only a few hundredths apart in terms of their pace at the moment, and that is also Will's best lap, I must add. And this is, I suspect, is going to be a bit of a transitional phase into the race. And once again, the Willingliss Reeve Taylor commentator's curse continues on. I mention him this time. I don't even have to go to him on camera, and I ruined Willingliss's race. I am very sorry about that, Will. A retirement then for Willingliss. And that just about settles it, really. It should be quite easy for Paul Millman to win this battle now, as his nearest rival now 8 seconds behind. Alan Matthews on the soft compounder tyre has had an issue on the previous lap as well. He's lapping in the 2-minute 13s on the last lap, but it was a 1:55 on his best. But I suspect, as I was going to say, if we're seeing the soft and the medium runners now on a similar time, within the next couple of minutes, we're going to start to see those medium compound cars starting to push on a little bit now, have maybe a few extra tenths under their belt to push on. Matt Daly has had a fairly big incident here. He's dropped down behind Paul Brady. This is quickly becoming a race of attrition, ladies and gentlemen. 1 second now separates Matt Daly and Willingliss. No, it doesn't. Try that again. 1.2 seconds now separates Matt Daly and Paul Millman at this phase in the race. Paul on the mediums, Matt Daly on the softs, I suspect with a bit of damage as well. 2:06 on the last lap. Matt Daly's best lap definitely stronger, but let's just see after this one how things are faring. between these two. Paul has dropped off a little bit through the first corner, but let's see if he's able to claw it back, or whether he just has to sit in waiting, really. He might not even need to make the overtake. He might just have to wait. We're starting to see now, I think, a few drivers struggling to get to grips with the car at this phase. As the tyres begin to drop off, the car becomes a little bit less drivable. It will be a full reverse grid, of course, for race 2. So, a bit of a shame to see Will English drop off, because he might have had a real chance in the second race coming up later on this evening. But Matt Daly then, his third position, his podium, under threat potentially from Paul Millman. What a great start to the season this would be for Paul. I think it's going to be a fantastic season, as we see that the drivers have been slowly but surely getting more competitive, especially those who may be slightly newer to sim racing throughout the series. So to return back to, shall we say, the cars of old, you know, the more simple cars that, I'm not going to say aren't difficult to drive, but are certainly, you can focus much more on say, the racing action going on instead of having to manage the car. It could be a very interesting season indeed, ladies and gentlemen, as we have, I suspect, a bit more of a level playing field with this racing platform. So it's going to be very interesting indeed. Matt Daly seems to have the measure at the moment, but with 10 minutes to go in this race, anything could happen yet, as we've seen at this point so far. Jack Cotton looks like he's had further difficulties on the previous lap. A 2-minute lap time that time around. I suspect he's also got damage. I think maybe Colin Keneath and Paul Brady, perhaps the only two cars here not running with some type of damage. As I say, a race of attrition. I was actually just making a slight tweak to my setup there in terms of the streaming and everything, and while we have a very slight lull in the action before I suspect it's going to crescendo up once again towards the end as we see a few drivers start to get closer to each other. Paul Brady versus Matt Daly is going to be an exciting one. I was actually just making a slight tweak to my setup, as I was saying there. I now have, I've upgraded a little bit. I've took some feedback on from the drivers from the previous series, so thank you very much. And I've made things a little bit easier for me to change scene during the race session, so you might see a bit more action going on in terms of getting replays and that sort of thing sorted. I'm also looking at trying to bring some drivers on for interviews if they have a moment after qualifying and such. So we will see some changes, so do look forward to those. But part of that is in thanks to, I now have a stream controller, which is in the form of an ancient old iPad that I've plugged in and now manages all my OBS for me instead of me having to tab out, etc. And it's really good, really enjoyable. But I set it up in a slightly silly way, really. I put the button for the scene that shows the racing happening, which is called live, next to the button for starting the stream, which is also called live. So I do apologise in qualifying before when I turned off the stream about 6 times when I tried to start watching some of the racing action. But that seems to be rectified now, as that's certainly not rectified for Jack Hodson. His car implanted into the barrier. A 70-mile-an-hour incident with the wall there. That is going to put the first bit of the replay system to good use. So apologies for that one, Jack, but we're going to get a quick glimpse at that at some point during race 2 as we go back on board with Colin Keneath leading this race and leading it well at the moment with a 20-second margin to P2. Paul Brady, the man in P2, gets ahead of Matt Daly after Matt's previous incident, but I suspect we're going to see a bit of a fight brewing between these two drivers at some point. They're quite similar. They're quite easy to confuse, of course. They are running the same number car, but oh dear, Matt Daly, the commentator's curse continues on. What a recovery, a full 720, I believe that was, as he is able to get back underway. He was dropped down by about 4 seconds, but all things considered, not bad at all. As now we're seeing Paul Millman only 3 seconds down on Matt Daly, and once again you start to wonder if the fight is going to be on. He did avoid any contact in terms of aero damage there, did Matt Daly, but the tyres will not be pleased with that one. They'll be nice and hot. Would have scrubbed off a bit of tread in them. Well, not tread, but a bit of rubber off them. And also could very well have flat spotted them as well. So Paul Millman on his medium compounder tyres, let's watch out for him. Alex Smith, I should add, has done a rather good job here of just keeping the nose clean after that disappointing start, and has pushed up nicely into 5th position now. As we do see Jack Hodson exiting the pit, which is nice to see, so he should have a good chance in the reverse grid race, although he is a lap down, so we'll see about that one. But as we head into the final 5 minutes of this race now, 5 seconds separate Matt Daly, Paul Brady, 4 seconds separate Paul Millman and Matt Daly, and then we have another 4.5 seconds separating Paul Millman and Alex Smith. So we're getting a bit of a midfield action starting to brew here now. This is going to be exciting towards the end, I suspect. Here we are then, final 4 minutes of this race, and still potential of some last-minute action really for this fight for the podium. That's what we're focusing on at this point. It seems to be Colin Knief has got the measure of it so far. A fantastic start to the season for Colin, all things considered. Alan Matthews had a bit of an instant here. No, it looks like he's just currently potentially on a lap down here, as the timing system seems to be slightly confused by that, so I suspect we make some changes there. We're on board with Alan Matthews' car, though. That is an unhappy car if ever I've seen one. The front wing, not even attached level anymore, and the same goes for the rear as well. I think our hats have to go off for Alan Matthews there, really, for just bringing this car home. That will not be a pleasant driving experience. If you're seeing the damage looking like that, it is well and truly in dire need of some repair, really. I mean, the car looks like, even at this low speed, it looks like it's on the limit of grip, and he is considerably slower around that corner than what we'd usually see from these cars. Going to go back on board now with Colin Knief. Colin Knief, 22 seconds ahead of Paul Brady. A mighty effort from Paul at this phase of the race. Meanwhile, Paul just about keeping the measure on Matt Daly. In terms of their pace at the moment, a 156 on the last lap for Paul. Meanwhile, a 154.5 for Matt Daly. So he seems to have picked things up a little bit, has Matt Daly. Apparently making a pit stop in this race. Not quite sure if I missed that. That'd be quite surprising, really, if that is the case. As I can see, it looks like the timing system has had a small error, so don't take the positions that you're seeing on the left-hand side of the screen as a gospel. It's also we're having difficulties on the back end as well in terms of driver tracking. So all we can do is go to good old-fashioned commentary, where we can just have a look and see where the drivers are positioned out on track. It's 1 minute 40 to go in this race. Now we do see a 2-second margin between Paul Brady and Matt Daly. Colin Knief is still leading 25 seconds ahead of the rest of the pack. A mighty drive from Colin. It's something we've come to expect from Colin at this point, really, as he heads now onto what is going to be towards the, well, mid-part of one of the final laps of race 1 here at Monza. Monza, what a fantastic venue to start the season's racing. Of course, started racing here at the Touring Cars, in the Touring Car Series as well. Historical, yet technical in some parts, but also has that high-speed thrill that we've come to enjoy. And we're going to move on to another highly technical circuit in 2 weeks' time, of course, at Singapore. So that is going to be completely different in most ways, in fact. Certainly going to keep the drivers very occupied. And as we head closer to the winter months, now as we see Paul Brady having some internet issues by the looks of things, that could end up seeing him drop out of the action. Is he able to carry on? Not quite too sure there. He is able to carry on, so pleased to see that. Matt Daly just behind in P3 as well. Paul Millman not too far behind, a few seconds down from there as well. It looks like the internet has sorted that problem out. Someone gets very close there to having an off through Ascari. Is that Paul Brady getting a little bit upset through the Variante there, through the chicane? I think it is. 0.6 of a second separating Paul Brady and Matt Daly now as we run down towards the Parabolica once again. Half a second, that now is the gap between the two. It's going to be Paul Brady heading onto the next lap in the lead of this action, but for how long? That is the question. As the timer does hit 0, that now is going to mean that this is in fact the penultimate lap of this race. No, it is in fact the last lap of this race, as my timing seems to make it. Not quite sure on that one though, so we'll have to double check later on into the lap. As Matt Daly enters the pits there, I suspect a penalty of some description to serve, and that is disastrous for Matt Daly's race. A race that he has been running in the podium in for so long, and it all seems to come to a bitter end. A great shame for him, but fantastic news for Paul Millman. He sat there laying, waiting, running those medium tyres, was running very well in this race. It all seemed to be going quite his way, it must have been said. It was looking pretty good already. P4 will be a great way to start the season, but now he's running in the podium scoring positions. And we look at Paul Brady once again. He's had the pressure relieved off him a little bit now, so all he needs to do is bring the car home. As we're seeing another man who's going to be bringing the car home here. We go on board with Colin Knief, our driver, who has led from start to finish in this race, apart from an entry into the first half of the lap. I think it was the first Lesmo, but that is all that he's had to challenge him, really, from Matt Daly at the very start of the race. After that, it has been nice, smooth sailing for Colin. As he runs down to the Parabolica once again, there is Matt Daly up in front of him, but that's not a driver he is trying to challenge. He has been pretty much unchallenged as we run through the Parabolica. The right-hander now, the man in the black and orange liveried car that we've come to know so well for doing well in this series, is once again looking like he's going to be doing well as he crosses the line to start the final lap there. There's your answer for that one. And gets ready to start the 14th and final lap of this race. We go on board then with Paul Brady as he gets ready to start this final lap, just has Parabolica to negotiate still. Let's go on board with Paul Millman then, our man in P3 at the moment on the medium compound of tyres. 40 seconds away from Colin Knief, but that doesn't concern him too much. What is of concern to him is just bringing this car home in the podium scoring positions. Matt Daly's had a bit of an incident. He's running in P4 still. He's able to go through the pits, leave the pits, and come out in P4. He had an incident through Ascari, which means it's going to be a last-minute fight between Matt Daly and Alex Smith. 1.2 seconds separate these two drivers. Alex Smith had incidents earlier on, has some damage to his name, also has the medium compound of tyres. So this battle could still be on between these two cars as we see them heading on to their final lap. Now let's go on board with Colin Knief as he negotiates the second Lesmo, 30 seconds clear of his nearest rival. We watch as Alex Smith sits in the tow. The slipstream in this car can make a difference. It's not the biggest difference in the world, but certainly can make a difference. And that car is looking very undrivable now for Matt Daly. He heads through the first corner of the car, fighting him at every opportunity. Less than a second now separating Matt Daly and Alex Smith. We are going to go on board though in just a moment with our man leading this race. Half a second this gap. I think it's going to be a close one between these two drivers. It's going to be a case of, can Matt Daly bring the car home and bring it safely and pointing the right direction? He nearly loses it there, but Alex Smith nearly follows him. We are going to go on board though with our man heading through Parabolica for one last time this lap. It has been an almighty drive for Colin Knief. I think we're going to have to get used to this. It's Colin Knief who crosses the line to take the race victory. Congratulations, Colin. The first of, I suspect, many race victories in this series. Up next is going to be Paul Brady coming home in just a moment's time, but we're seeing this battle between Matt Daly and Alex Smith seems to have come to a bit of an end, actually, as we see Paul Brady now heading through the right-hander, getting ready to come home in second position. It's been a quietly very good race for Paul Brady here. Had some pressure from Matt Daly. Was down into P3 at one point, has worked his way back up to P2 just through sheer survival, really. It is Paul Brady who comes home second position then, and now we wait for just a moment before the rest of the podium is rounded out. Alan Matthews and Jack Hodson come home in 6th and 7th position respectively as they get ready for race 2, the reverse grid race coming up in just a moment. We go on board though with Paul Millman, who crosses the line to take home P3, his first podium of the season. A very nice result indeed for Paul there. Next up, we are going to be having Alex Smith, who actually comes home ahead of Matt Daly. Matt Daly at the very last moment having a big off at Parabolica. Alex Smith comes home 4th position, and we're going to have to wait for Matt Daly to come home 5th as well. So a good recovery drive there for Alex Smith. Plum last at one point, works his way up to 4th position. Matt Daly fighting for so long in P2 and P3, at one point ahead of Colin Knief, now finds himself coming home P5 in the end. A disastrous race for Matt. All I can say is it makes a good start for the reverse grid race in just a few moments. And that brings an end to race 1. Colin Knief charged and ready for race 2. We'll catch you in just a few minutes for the reverse grid race here at Monza. Welcome back to the action, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are then, ready for race 2, the reverse grid race. And here's a look at the order for this second race of the evening. It is Jack Hodson, Alan Matthews, Matt Daly, Alex Smith, Paul Millman, Paul Brady and Colin Knief getting ready to have a go and run down into the first corner. I suspect this is going to be even more action-packed than the start of race 1, so let's find out in just a moment. It's a fairly wide track actually for such narrow cars, so plenty of racing room. Let's hope the drivers respect it, as we do have 6 red lights on the gantry, a couple seconds to go, and we are away for race 2 here at Monza. It's a decent start for everyone. Once again, Alan Matthews in particular, I think, has got a particularly good run down in to the first corner. He does. He has the inside line as well. That second grid position looking well for Alan Matthews. He needs to go late on the brakes to try and defend this race lead. Colin going very elbows out to try and score some positions already. Jack Hodgson still leading in this race actually from the get-go. There's contact between Paul Brady and Colin Keneath. Colin Keneath with front wing damage to start the race. Not an ideal start to our race 1 victor. Let's see how things progress later on into the lap, though. Having a look down the outside, here is Alan Matthews. Is he going to have to go late on the brakes for the outside of the left-hander coming up in just a moment? We saw the move attempted by Matt Daly. It didn't work out very well, though. It does work out well for Alan Matthews. Fantastic move there. That's also allowed the aforementioned Matt Daly on the through, though. This is how he wanted to do it in race 1. Here he is then past Jack Hodgson, who backs out of it quite early on. Putting the pressure on Alan Matthews is Matt Daly. Is this going to be the start to the race that Matt Daly needed? I suspect it will be. There we go then as we exit the second Lesmo. Have the run down the hill in just a moment. But there we have Matt Daly hanging it around the outside of the slight left-hander. Has got a nose out in front. Can he maintain that lead, though, as we're going to head into the Ascari chicane in just a moment? It's Alan Matthews with the inside here. Can he cover that curb off? I think he can, but not well enough. There's contact between the two. That was perhaps a bit too opportunistic into the... oh dear, this is disaster for over half the field. Getting caught up in the chaos at the Variante Ascari here. What an absolute disaster. It's Alan Matthews who leads on then. He was involved in that early incident, but seems to have just about escaped it. There we have Alex Smith then in the identical liveried car. He's somehow also made it through pretty much unscathed. In fact, it looks like he's unscathed. And then we also have Paul Brady, who's, after having a fantastic race 1, seems to be on for a decent race 2 as well. Then we have Colin Keneath with substantial front wing damage now. I suspect he was caught up in that action. Then we also have Matt Daly, of course, fighting to maintain the lead into that corner. Now finds himself battling with Colin Keneath as he wanted to in race 1, but it's for P4 and P5 this time around. Then we have Jack Hodgson. Commiseration to Jack for this race, really. Sorry, for this race weekend. It was a fantastic start in race 1 before it all went wrong. Then it was a fantastic start in race 2 before it all went wrong. And let's see if he can recover on that medium compound of tyre once again. We'll get on to that in just a second. Paul Millman as well started fairly low down this race, given his great position in race 1, but has been majorly impacted by that accident at the Ascari chicane there. Just look at how absolutely toast that car is. That is very unfortunate indeed. He was on for a very good points haul this weekend, of course. Podium in race 1. It'll still be decent. It's just not what Paul Millman would have wanted, I suspect, as we go back on board with our race leader under a bit of pressure perhaps from Alex Smith, but Colin Keneath and Matt Daly trying to scythe on through the field. Plenty of damage on their cars. Now, our report from race 1. We do have plenty of drivers reporting that the curbs seem to be a bit of a bugbear at this circuit, as perhaps we'd already bear witness to it here, and the drivers, I think, are going to have to be oh so careful in avoiding these curbs now. Also, the soft compound tyre seems to be very unforgiving at this circuit. So interesting that we've still got Matt Daly actually opting for that soft, when every other driver in the field has jumped onto the medium now in order to try and make the car bring it to make the car really raceable towards the end of the race. Paul Brady actually describing it as like driving on ice really towards the end. So these tyres perhaps having a bit more of a degradation to them than I initially suspected. So that we want to watch out for, not only in this race but also in the wider season as well. I suppose there isn't all that much in terms of tyre on these cars. Really, they are diddy little tyres for some diddy little cars really, as we head down onto the next lap. Once again, 5 minutes of this race heading by already because it was just so chaotic and action-packed at the start. I suspect our 2 closest drivers at the moment, or really all of our close action is in the mid-pack. It's Colin Keneath and Paul Brady. Paul Brady only is separated from Colin by about half of a second now, so it's very close running between these two. A bit of damage on Paul Brady's car, plenty of damage on the front of Colin's as well, so it's going to be an interesting battle between these two. This could be one battle that certainly benefits Matt Daly in this race, of course. Let's not forget, 2 seconds separating these two drivers, that is Matt Daly and Colin Keneath. But the battle out in front between Colin and Paul Brady is certainly going to slow those two drivers up. So Matt might be brought back into this, and we could be seeing a battle scoping out for this third place position just yet. There's certainly a battle going on for the first place position. Alan Matthews versus Alex Smith. Perhaps a little bit unexpected, but I'm very much looking forward to it. As we see side by side Paul Brady and Colin Knief, we've seen two drivers battling heading into Ascari going wrong already in this race. Are we going to see that again? Bit of a weave going on. These two cars are very damaged indeed, so they're going to have to be careful as we see them making it through cleanly, I'm pleased to report, with Colin out in front, third position for Colin, fourth for Paul Brady. Alex Smith, meanwhile, does in fact get the upper hand on Alan Matthews. That's, in fact, not over yet. It's side by side between these two drivers as we head through the right-hander. Alex Smith drops back. In fact, only just, though. They're still very close together. Alex now opting take advantage of the slipstream as we head onto the start-finish straight. Meanwhile, just behind it, side by side between Paul Brady and Colin Knief, as we have Alex Smith get a nose out in front. Only just, though. They make contact. They bang tyres together as we run into that first corner once again. Alan Matthews concedes the position in the end. Meanwhile, we're going to have a repeat of that now into the first corner. It's going to be Paul Brady against Colin Knief. Paul has the inside. Colin's going to have the inside for the second part of the corner. We've seen drivers come together here plenty of times before. These two make it through relatively cleanly. And it's Colin out on top this time around. And just as feared, or rather suspected, Matt Daly is able to have a go now. As we see these two slow down after this battle, it's going to be Matt Daly hanging it around the outside through the second corner and having a look, potentially taking the position now into the second variante. And there we go. It is Matt Daly up into P4, two positions at the start of this lap, lost by Paul Brady. Not an ideal start for him, but certainly what Colin Knief and Matt Daly wanted from this race. Interesting, actually, the damage on the cars. It is front wing damage for Colin Knief, complete and utter rear wing annihilation for Paul Brady, and I suspect Matt Daly is somewhere in the middle. So we'll see what specification of wing, shall we say, wins out towards the end of this race. Meanwhile, out in front, speaking of winning out, Alex Smith leads this race now by 1 second. Certainly not an insurmountable margin. We've seen bigger margins overturned plenty of times before, but it's a good bit of momentum now for Alex Smith. He just needs to try and keep the nose clean. Likewise for Alan Matthews, a disastrous race in race one. Can he bring those learnings from the first race into this second and potentially come away with a podium? It's all to play for so far into this race, not even halfway through just yet. Colin Knief on the medium compounder tyre this time around should have a bit more pace towards the end of the race, up into third position, a podium scoring position, which is what he would have wanted from this race. And he certainly is running well, is Colin. He's just set 2 purple sectors as he starts this lap. Did briefly hold the fastest lap of the race so far, but that accolade has been taken. In fact, no, completely wrong. Ignore me once again. Matt Daly has just set his fastest lap of the race so far, but that is a good half a second slower than Colin's fastest lap, which is 1:54.3. So the time's certainly slower than race one because everyone has damage. We had a few cars with damage at the start of race one. At this point in race two, everyone has got damage. So times are not going to be quite there with what we saw at the start of race one, which is a shame, but it means we've had plenty of action. So no, there's two sides of the coin there, really. As we go on board with Alan Matthews, there's about 1.4 seconds separating those two cars. In the grand scheme of things as well, with everything that's gone on in this race, the field is relatively close. The top 5, 8 seconds covering them, especially after all the incidents. You know, it could certainly be a larger margin. And then my heart goes out really to the likes of Jack Hodson and Paul Millman, caught up in that earlier instance at Ascari. Nothing they really could have done. And they've got a tough challenge to bring these cars home. I believe, has Paul Millman pitted? No, he hasn't. Paul Brady has apparently pitted, as has Alan Matthews. I'm not quite sure if that is an accurate depiction, but either way, I'm sure we could be seeing a bit more action later on. So fear not, I doubt these positions are going to be the final positions for the evening's racing. We have actually had Matt Daly disconnect from the server. Not sure what's gone on there. Colin Knief, meanwhile, is setting purple sectors on this lap, so this is going to be a quick one, despite all the damage he's got. But Matt Daly conceding from this race. I'm not too sure what's gone on there, but that is a disappointing start to the action for Matt Daly, not the way you wanted this season to start, particularly when Colin Keefe is looking like it could be on for a very decent points haul indeed. And in terms of points, let's have a look at them now. A little bit pointless, given that, well, certainly won't be pointless, it'll be full of points, but might seem a little bit silly given that we've not really had any other racing to speak of at all in this series, but let's have a look anyway. So it is our top scorer, Colin Keefe, with 25 points to his name, followed by Paul Brady, Paul Millman, Alex Smith, Matt Daly, Alan Matthews, Jack Hodson, and Will Inglis. Our order for race 1, and that is our championship order so far. This will be updated, of course, after the evening's running comes to its conclusion at the end of this race, and that can be found at AROC2.emperorservers.com for a bit more info behind the timing and the likes of this championship behind this scene. So that's AROC2.emperorservers.com. I should really, now that I've got my fancy tablet system, I should really get a little prompt that kind of pops up. I'll make sure to do that for next time around. And then you can all shout at me in the comments for the next round when I have inevitably haven't done that. Alex Smith leading this race then is building a nice comfortable lead, but I suspect we're going to be seeing Colin Keefe in the mix at some point in the second half of this race. He's still setting purple sectors as Alex Smith goes 2 seconds into the lead of this race now. Colin Keefe is only 2 seconds down on P2. As I say, he's lapping very nicely at 1:53.4 on the last lap. That's his fastest lap of the race so far. He's getting into a bit of a rhythm now. The car might be damaged, but the fuel load is getting lighter, and he's got a little bit less pressure on him from behind, at least, as he looks to set his sights what's going on out in front. Still a mighty fine effort, even with everything that's gone on, to be coming home with a podium. It would be nice to see Colin achieving that. Another purple lap throughout every sector then for Colin Keefe, for 1:53.2 on the previous go-around. 1 second now separating Colin Keefe and Alan Matthews. Well, as far as my memory serves, I don't believe Alan's got all that much in terms of damage. We know Colin Keefe has some fairly substantial front wing damage he's running on his car at the moment. So I suspect we're going to have quite an interesting battle developing here in just a moment. We head through the Lesmos now. Just about to cross through the halfway stage of this race. Everyone lapping in the 1:55s at the moment. Colin setting blistering laps in comparison to the 1:53s. So I make it around about, I'd say, if he enjoys this battle and hopefully makes it through unscathed, I think we could be two, maybe 3, maybe even 1 lap away from a Colin Keefe charge for the victory, which I'm sure he will thoroughly enjoy. As Alex Smith potentially starting to feel the pressure now. He's built a decent margin out in front. It's certainly not insurmountable, as I say. He's still going to be looking in his rearview mirrors every now and again to see how his rivals, also occupying the podium, are doing. But he's not completely in the grips of battle, if you will. So Alex should be feeling decently comfortable, but I suspect that comfort will be fading as he not only sees Alan Matthews battling, he also sees Colin Keefe putting a charge on Alan. He knows that black and orange livery is going to be soon the car that is going to be hunting him down for the race lead. His only possible respite would have been had Colin slowed down Alan in the midst of battle, but we've seen there down the straight using the slipstream. Colin has able to go late on the brakes, switch over before the braking zone even, and take second position there. A nice move from Colin Keefe for second position in this race. Now he finds himself 2 seconds down on Alex Smith. There was 1:54 on that previous lap, so my napkin maths there says it's going to be around about 1 and a bit seconds before. Sorry, 1 and a bit seconds? No. 1.5, 2 laps before we see a battle for the race lead between Colin Keefe and Alex Smith. Let's see, will this charge Alex Smith on really to fight for this race lead? We had in the previous season, of course, a change of the guard really in terms of who is going to be fighting for the single-seater wins. Of course, that man was Alex Smith in the end. And now we're starting to see Colin Keefe returning back and saying, sorry, sunshine, the party's over, it's time. Time for business as usual here as we see Colin Keefe heading down towards Ascari now. 1.4 seconds separating these two drivers. That time is certainly tumbling down now. That previous lap for Alex, a 155.1. Previous for Colin, a 140.0. What's it going to be on this lap when Colin's had a bit more free running there? You can see in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, ladies and gentlemen, the predicted time, a 153.5. Let's go on board with Alex Smith. His predicted time, a 155.1. So very consistent is Alex Smith. It's just, will it be enough to fight for this race lead? Let's find out as he heads round Parabolica once again. The gap shrinks even further, and as that predicted time turns into a real time in just a moment now. On the last lap, it was a 153.6 for Colin Knief, a 155 for Alex Smith. He's not going to quite get the overtake done before the corner yet, but he's certainly going to be ready to fight for the position now as he runs in that slipstream, gets closer and closer and closer, and we run down towards the next overtaking opportunity, which will be the second Variante coming up in just a moment. There we have 10 minutes to go in this race and a 10 minutes of racing action to go. A fight for the lead. This could be anyone's game here. Let's not count out the likes of Alan Matthews. Paul Brady's even only 10 seconds off the lead of this race, but Alan Matthews only a couple seconds down. Anything can happen in this battle, and then we're going to see Alan Matthews in the midst and ready to fight once more. As we saw late on in race 1, incidents certainly were not rare. So let's see. More drivers on the medium compound. In fact, only medium compound runners now remaining in this race. Let's see if they are going to be able to keep the nose clean, keep the car on the tarmac. Are we going to see less incidents because of that, or are we going to see the action amplified as the cars are a bit more raceable? I think we might have our answer between these two, as it's looking very raceable indeed. Colin, 0.2 of a second down. Now going to be pretty much side-by-side heading into Ascari. Alan Matthews is no stranger to an incident into Ascari, fighting for the lead. Alan has the inside, Colin has the outside. Alan squeezes him as much as he can. Colin uses all the room available to him, but isn't able to charge just yet. Nice defensive driving there from Alex Smith. Sorry, not Alan Matthews, Alex Smith. Nice defensive driving from Alex Smith this time around as we go side by side once again. Going to head into Parabolica this time around. Colin's going to have to go the long way around. If he can make it stick, that will be mighty impressive defending there from Alex Smith, but that opens up the inside of the track to Colin as we head on to the start-finish straight once again. There is contact between the two. Rubbing and racing, of course. That is all the slipstream he could possibly want from Colin. Side by side now, has the momentum, gets a nose out in front, but which car performs better in the aerodynamic department? Let's find out as we run down into the first corner once again. It's going to be Colin with the inside line here. Alex, will he concede or will he fight late onto the brakes? I can tell you he's going to concede now. It's going to be Colin in the lead of this race. The back end steps out. Alex sees his opportunity, darts out to the left-hand side. It's side by side once again. Alex, can he lose out? He is going to lose out. In fact, it's Colin still in the lead of this race as we run down to the second Variante once again. But Alex is very much in the mix here still as he has a look around the outside. It's still side by side. There's more contact. Late on the brakes goes Alex Smith. There might be contact between the two here. They both make the corner. I'm very surprised by that. A bit elbows out potentially from Alex Smith. It's Colin back down into P2. Alex really fighting for this one now. This is fantastic action and exactly what I've been missing for the past few months. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be plenty more to come as we head into the mid part of the lap now through the Lesmos. 2/10 once again. We've seen it on the previous lap. We're going to see it again, ladies and gentlemen, as we head down to Ascari. This time, Colin goes for the outside once again. Alex opting for that inside line. He's going to try and force his opponent to run out of track. Forces him too much and loses out because of it, and gets collected by Alan Matthews as well. This is utter disaster for Alex Smith. How quickly can he get back underway? Because there is Paul Brady. There's more contact. Alex couldn't get out of the way quick enough. And there we have Paul Brady being involved in the incident as well. This is disaster. It went so good, but it went so bad for Alex Smith here, fighting for the race lead and putting up a good fight as well. Paul Brady, an unfortunate bystander. He actually disconnects from the session as a result. Alex Smith drops down into P4 now, but is going to drop down into P5. Last position in this race now. Are we going to see a race retirement from Alex Smith? I certainly hope not. Colin Knief then, a fairly unchallenged lead now with Alan Matthews back up into P3. And Jack Hodson, who had a disastrous race weekend, really, all things considered, in race 1. And race 2 was not looking much better. Now finds himself running in the podium. Where has this come from? This is fantastic for Jack. A bit of a recovery for his weekend, really, as we have Paul Newman running in P4 at the moment. Alex Smith crawling along with a completely ruined car. He is effectively out of this race. Only 4 horses remain in this race now. This has been very much a weekend of attrition. Over 50% of the grid, I believe, dropping off in the end. This is not ideal, but we continue on nonetheless. Colin then 4 seconds in the lead of this race, and he certainly wouldn't have wanted it to have ended in the way that he did. He's just, I think, quite lucky he wasn't also ending in the way that Alex Smith and Paul Brady's races ended, and he is actually able to continue on. Otherwise, we would have seen a very lonely 1-2 finish for Alan Matthews and Jack Hodson. Colin then leading this race as he led it in race 1, and we wait to bring the cars home for the final few minutes of this race. And there we have confirmation that Alex Smith is in the pits now. That is him out of this race. 4 drivers remaining now, as we have Colin Keneath 5 seconds in the lead of this race, still setting purple sectors, I should add. After all of that battling, the tyres still seem to have a decent bit of life left in them. Of course, the fuel load lighter as well. That previous lap, a 153.9. The other drivers in the 55s and 56s. And his best lap so far, a 153.2. 6 seconds now the lead to Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews, of course, fighting for the lead early on in this race. He perhaps all was said and done really after things didn't really go his way. Things really didn't go his way earlier on in the race, but he was able to recover and could be on for a podium here. Although, as I said before, as we found out in race 1 as well, really nothing is certain as it seems. Let's see as we head into the final few minutes of this race now. I should mention as well, of course, it's not only every fortnight that the AROC sim racing action occurs, it's every week, it's every Wednesday. Stream starting at 8 PM, of course. Next week it will be Giulietta WTCR touring cars, also at the same venue that the Formula Alphas will be at in a fortnight's time, Singapore, which is a decision that I do fully support, actually. Of course, it's nice to have the calendar variety, but it is also nice as well to give the drivers a better opportunity to practice and get a bit more familiar with the circuits. So while obviously the cars are very different in behaviour and driving style, at least you know a bit more familiarity with the tracks if you're not able to practice for every given round, which of course real life does get in the way sometimes. So next week it's Singapore, followed by Singapore for the Formula Alphas as well, Silverstone after that as well. Singapore going to be an interesting one for the WTCRs. I do like a touring car street circuit. It's always good fun. Potentially just as much chaos and collision, just as many chaotic moments and collisions as what we've seen in Monza so far this week. It's a return to form, really, Phil. I would like to apologise. It seems to be the commentator's curse really did kick into effect so far this evening, and that is perhaps making up for the fact that in another series I was commentating on over the summer, pretty much no commentator's curse at all to speak of. So sorry, I've saved it all for the AROC. For the AROC Racing League. So I do apologise for that one. But we continue nonetheless. 10 seconds now the gap between Colin Keneath and Alan Matthews. About 1 minute 20 into this lap. So it looks like just about we're going to get 2 more laps of this race in. See Colin running down towards the final corner of this racetrack, this historic racetrack, of course. Got to have Italian-powered machinery on an Italian venue like this one, and what a venue it is. I'm yet to visit myself in person, I must admit, as the timer is looking like we've got about 3 seconds till the start of the next lap. So I think Colin is just about clear. We are pretty much on the nose there. This is not, in fact, this is the penultimate lap, I believe. Yeah, it is the penultimate lap. So that is very close indeed there. We are now on the penultimate lap, but yeah, it's great to be at this venue. A venue I'm yet to visit in real life. I will make that change, because seeing, obviously, with the departure of Alfa Romeo as a brand from F1 is a big loss, but obviously we do have some solace in being able to support the Tifosi, one of the other Italian crews in Formula 1, the other one being, of course, the PayPal Cash Out Monza team, or whatever they're called. Not my line, the line from the ever-brilliant James Vowles. It is great to be able to, but you've got to be a member of the Tifosi, really, haven't you, when a Ferrari comes across the line in the race lead at Monza, and just seeing that atmosphere makes me want to visit. I've never actually been to Italy myself at all, in any way, so I've got to get the Mito down there at some point. But I'm sure Colin is certainly a fan of Italy at the moment, and he'll be wanting to return there. Or, I'm not too sure, actually. Colin the Scot, of course, is perhaps not quite familiar with the weather there as we approach the weather that I'm sure he's a bit more accustomed to. We've certainly had it today where I am in Liverpool. We've certainly had some Scottish traditional weather. As we see him heading through Ascari now, that's one part of the track which has caught so many a driver out so far this evening. He is able to navigate it safely, though, for what will be one of the final times this weekend. And it looks like he's going to be bringing it home pretty much unchallenged in this one, despite having many challenges early on and midway through this race as well. It certainly hasn't been easy, and it certainly has been action-packed. A good return to form there as Colin crosses the line to take the Race 2 victory. Congratulations, Colin, there. A double victory. What a way to start the season for the black and orange liveried car there. He means business, does Colin Knief then. Then we're going to have Alan Matthews, who seems to be coming across the line relatively slowly. No, it looks to be good there. Alan Matthews coming home P2 in the end there. I think he might be out of fuel. So very fine margins there for Alan Matthews. Next up we have Jack Hudson. Jack Hudson, a weekend to forget for him at the start of things. And race 1, not great. Didn't look amazing in race 2 at one point as well. But through sheer attrition, is going to come home with a podium here. So congratulations, Jack. A decent haul of points on the board for Jack to start the season with, as he rounds out the podium then this evening and comes home in P3. Alex Smith comes home P4 despite fighting for the lead. That car looking very poorly indeed. And then we have Paul Millman coming home in just a moment. Again, a disastrous race for him. Ascari, all went wrong. Race 1, it went so well, another podium. It's still P5 in the end because, again, a race of attrition here. So a decent point haul all around for Paul Millman. He's going to be crossing the line, rounding out the running in P5. And it certainly was action-packed, but that's just how we like it sometimes, isn't it? That brings an end to our running here at Monza for round 1 of the Formula Alpha Championship. I hope you've enjoyed watching it as much as I've enjoyed commentating it. I'll catch you in a fortnight's time, and in a week's time, in fact, a fortnight's time for the next round of the Formula Alpha action, but also in a week's time for the touring car action, which will both be at Singapore. So stay tuned. I look forward to seeing you there. I look forward to commentating there. We'll catch you for the next couple of rounds. Catch you later. Thank you very much for watching.